Blood on the Bayous is supported in part by Dr. B.B. Trotter from Abilene, Texas, and the Fort Butler Foundation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Frazier, and we're continuing our series on the Civil War in Texas and Louisiana. By early October, Benjamin Butler knew that the Confederates had moved back into the sugar parishes to stay. It was his turn to make a move, and he intended on driving the Confederates completely out of the LaFourche country for good. He asked his engineering officer, Brigadier General Godfrey Weitzel, to come up with a plan on how to drive these guys out of the region and, if possible, to actually capture the entire Confederate army operating along the banks of Bayou LaFourche. Weitzel came up with a three-pronged plan. One was to send an invasion force up the Mississippi River to land at Donaldsonville. Another would be to go up the tracks of the Opelousas and New Orleans Railroad. And the third would be to send a gunboat squadron around into the Gulf of Mexico, up Atchafalaya Bay into Berwick Bay, and then cut off any Confederate retreat. If all three of these prongs hit at the right time, all of the Confederate forces in the LaFourche country would be trapped. First, the Riverine Invasion headed out of Camp Carrollton, escorted by three 90-day gunboats, USS Itasca, Scioto, and Caneo. These boats were all newly built. They were ordered with the instructions that they had to be completed in 90 days. As a result, they're almost throwaway wooden gunboats, but they are the only boats on the river. Confederates can't counter them, so they're pretty doggone useful. These gunboats are accompanying transports, which are carrying 2 batteries of artillery, 5 regiments of infantry, and about 3 companies of cavalry to do some scouting work up front. Meanwhile, up the tracks, the 8th Vermont, along with the 1st Louisiana Native Guard, would be repairing the tracks as they went, with the goal of reestablishing that line of communications between New Orleans and Brashear City. The 1st Louisiana Native Guard in this campaign may be the first deployment of black troops in the field in the entire war. From the sea, the Federals were launching 4 shallow draft gunboats: USS Diana, Kinsman, Estrella, and Calhoun. These 4 boats, with any luck, would make it into Berwick Bay and then be able to operate in the shallow waters of Bayou Teche and the Grand Lake region. They were accompanying the steamer St. Mary's. Aboard was our old friends, the 21st Indiana. This invasion launches on October 24th. By the next day, Weitzel has landed in Donaldsonville, deployed his 5 regiments, and alarm is sweeping through the LaFourche country. The Federals are back. Now, he has about 4,000 troops at his disposal, but he does something that is very clearly shows the mind of an engineer. He builds a portable pontoon bridge, essentially using cotton flats and bayou barges to make a makeshift bridge of boats that will allow him to command both sides of the bayou as he advances, so troops on the east bank can communicate with troops on the west bank. Well, as he is getting his army ready to march down the bayou, couriers are going out to try to gather in the Confederate forces. Turns out Mouton is caught somewhat by surprise. His army is still scattered. The 24th Louisiana is still in camps at Fort Bisland on Bayou Teche, or Camp Bisland as they called it at that point. It's their camp of instruction. That's where they're getting back into fighting shape. Similarly, the 18th Louisiana is hanging out at Brashear City, also trying to stand back up as a viable combat unit. Really, the only infantry that Mouton has immediately at his disposal is the 33rd Louisiana, that sort of oddly combined unit of the 10th Yellow Jacket Battalion, mostly Cajuns, and the New Orleanians of the Confederate Guards Response Battalion. They hated each other so much that he had to divide them into 2 separate battalions. He's also supplemented with the Terrebonne Militia and also a battery of artillery at Thibodaux. Directly outside of Donaldsonville, though, he has the 2nd Louisiana Cavalry. And the 2nd Louisiana Cavalry is backed by 2 batteries. Their job is to really keep an eye on the Federals as they advance. Mouton understands that he has just enough time to perhaps concentrate his forces in order to resist this Union advance. He chooses the town of Labadie Ville as the appropriate place to set up an ambush. Meanwhile, he tells his troops to tear up the tracks as much as they can between Thibodaux and into the swamps heading towards New Orleans. If anything, that'll delay the advance of the 8th Vermont while he dispatches Weitzel's army somewhere around Thibodaux. Well, Weitzel's not spooked by this. He starts his steady advance right down Bayou Lafourche, and by October 26th, he's at Napoleonville. He's got troops on the east bank. He's got troops on the west bank. Mouton knows he's coming. He picks a position around a place called Georgia Landing. It's actually the Texana Road, and it is a position where he has woods that he can put his troops in, and then clear fields of fire in front of them. It's not a very sophisticated position, but if the Federals continue to blunder along, they'll come out of broken cover only to find themselves at the very muzzles of Confederate muskets and artillery. One weakness to this position: Mouton does not have a bridge that connects both banks. In fact, he's relying on bridges that are back in Labadie Ville, more than a mile behind his line. Well, by the morning of October 27th, Weitzel's cavalry comes back and reports, hey, we've got Rebs up ahead. They're in position. They look like they're expecting us, but they're on both sides of the bayou. And Weitzel says, I know exactly how I'm going to deal with this.